coaching for me is something I take very seriously. And, you know, I'm not of the mind where just because you have a significant rank automatically means that you are just by default going to be a good coach. I don't believe that. I think that's ridiculous. My coaching style that I like to kind of like break down scenarios, because you can show somebody how to do 1,000,001 things, but at the end of the day, actually no, I want to go over to the stage. At the end of the day, it really, you can't fight for them. It's like a real fight. You know, if I'm training somebody for a boxing match, I can train somebody how to throw a proper jab, cross, hook, uppercut, bob, weave, slip, pivot. I can do all of these things in boxing. But at the end of the day, it's up to you, the player, to have the fight IQ to utilize what I have shown you, teached you, or should have taught you, advised you, and how to implement that in your particular fight or match. And I think as a coach, you have to provide your clients with enough scenarios to where if they're in scenario A, they can do B. If they're in B, they can do C. If it's C, they can do A. But at the end of the day, it's up to that particular player or fighter to you know, to leverage what was shown and passed down to them. So for instance, let me just go, I think I already have Steve Fox set to throw jabs, right? So one of the things that I really like about Feng Wei, for instance, when it comes to risk versus reward, and I'm pretty sure a lot of Feng players already know this, but just to give you an example, if you do standing 1-1, now standing 1-1, it's only an 11 frame attack. Only 11 frame attack. If we have, let's say, Steve set to sidestep, right? So you can sidestep, right? You can sidestep left. You can sidestep right, which means more than likely you can sidewalk it as well, right? Now, this does have a degree of risk, right? However, when looking at these particular scenarios, then you're like, okay, well, if we understand that the jab is the most important punch in boxing, much like it is in Tekken, it's a rangefinder. It's basically like, okay, well, it's a very non-committal thing, right? 10 frames plus 1 on block. And a lot of times what you're doing is, it's not so much for you to land the jab on your opponent. I mean, if it does, that's gravy, it's good. But you're looking to see how your opponent is reacting. If I go back to the fight, the boxing standpoint, are they looking to, are they shelling up? Are they shoulder rolling? Are they catch countering? Are they trying to slip? Are they trying to pivot? Are they trying to overhand right over the top? Like, all of these scenarios are revealed by just simply throwing a jab. In Tekken, it's the same thing. If I throw a jab, my opponent is going to sidestep, you know, either direction. Are they going to backdash? Are they going to duck? So looking at this, you're gathering data on your opponent, and you're doing this by just simply throwing a jab, which again is a very non-committal attack. So now in terms of risk versus reward, I would say, for instance, Feng Wei's standing 1-1, if the opponent tries to retaliate like this, you get yourself a full combo. You know, whatever that combo may look for you as a Feng player, you know, it all really just depends. But you have that. That's your reward. If your opponent is trying to press buttons, they're trying to mash. However, if you are dealing with an opponent that you see is, you know, looking to sidewalk, you know, that's their reaction, then you would know, you know something, it's a little bit risky to throw this out because there's a chance they may sidestep me. Now you have to weigh in against the risk versus reward. Obviously, if they step at you in this situation, you are going to more than likely get launched or whatever. However, if you see that your opponent is, you know, some opponents, they're very aggressive. If you throw out an attack, they're trying to attack you right back, and you can see that. So that's when you like, okay, well, if I'm seeing that my opponent is doing this, then maybe later on in the round, or maybe a different round, I will now instead do and commit to the standing 1-1, and I get a huge payoff. So there you have the risk versus reward. The reward, where if you do make the read, you get a full 80 to 90 damage combo on your opponent. Now let's just say, you know, for argument's sake, if your opponent doesn't press, they don't do anything, they're standing still, you're only risking an 11 frame punish on block. It's definitely in your favor. It only goes out of your favor in this situation if your opponent is sidestepping, and you can look to see this or get a better read on this by simply just throwing out the jab or down forward 1 or whatever pokes you're choosing to do. Because if you are, and again this comes down to fight IQ or just player IQ, if you're seeing that your opponent is more so the sidestep maneuverability type player, then you know that, okay, doing standing 1-1 is probably a little bit risky. But if you notice you're fighting the type of player that is more rooted, they're not really moving that much. If they do something, they're probably backdashing, or they're probably just mashing something in, you know, they're trying to send you a receipt. That's where it's worth the risk to go for the 1-1. Because in that situation, again, if they block it, you're only going to take a minus 11 punish. If I see my opponent is sidestepping, or they're, you know, or they're sidewalking, you know, now it's like, all right, well, what moves do we have that could potentially disrupt that? Okay, you can potentially go for something like with Feng Wei's forward 4, which I feel is an excellent move. It is a high, it can be crouched. However, on normal hit, this move gives a full combo. I'm actually surprised that this does not require a counter hit. This is just regular hit. And the fact that this move comes out at 18 frames, but also this move also comes out at 18 frames. So by design, the blueprint of Feng Wei, this move being a high 18 frame attack that gives you a full combo on hit, can be paired with down forward 3, which has the exact same frame properties. Down forward 3 is a mid that's safe on block, okay? And also, if your opponent is sidestepping one particular direction, let's say this, right? So you can see, if I do the down forward 3 option, sidestepping left, Steve evades that. However, if I do the forward 4 option, he gets hit by this. Okay? And I believe, conversely, if you go the other opposite way, if you sidestep into his right, if I do forward 4, he whiffs. If I do down forward 3, he gets hit. So it does come with a bit of a degree of risk. Sure, it can, but again, risk versus reward. If this connects, you get a full combo. If it's blocked, it's safe. If they duck, they can launch you. So the risk versus reward is pretty much balanced. The same thing goes with the down forward 3. Down forward 3 comes out at the same frames. It's only -9, and I do believe that is well worth the risk because it is it's a tornado combo, but still a combo on hit. And then in the event your opponent is trying to duck this, they're going to get hit by this if you make the read. So it really just comes down to providing your client with the moves that are good, but also explaining the weaknesses that those moves possess, just so that your client can make the best informed decision that they can make. And that's really what it comes down to. Because if we're going to focus on, oh, well, this move, it can be sidestepped and it's a high, I can duck it. If you're going to dismiss all of the benefits that this move has when it does land, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Allow your client to differentiate, should I go for this move? Because if this move does connect, I get a very good payoff here. I get a very good payoff. This is a very, very good payoff as far as I'm concerned. And that's not even including heat or any of that other stuff. And then of course, you know, if my opponent happens to duck because they don't want to deal with this, well, this comes out at the same frames. And again, risk versus reward. If they block this, it's safe. They can't punish this. So it doesn't even matter if they make the read, I'm safe anyway. So that's, you know, and there's so many other layers when it comes to coaching people in this game, or any game for that matter. I'm a firm believer of providing your client with as much data, with as much information as you possibly can. Because like I said, again, if I go back to the boxing example, if I'm throwing a jab, while the jab is good, it's great, there are counters to the jab as well. You know, if your opponent can time you, you have overhand rights, they can catch counter, they can slip to the outside, and like there's different things you can do. And the same thing with a fighting game. You know, you can duck a jab, you know, you can counter the jab. There's a lot of things you can do. It's rare in Tekken 8. They exist, but it is rare to come across situations where you just can't do anything. But understanding what you can and can't do in this game is very, very key. And to have your client understand that. Because again, like I said, you cannot fight for your client. Once they take your lessons, once they absorb what you are passing on, they then have to implement it. And depending on their own fight IQ level, they may succeed or not. Of course, your coaching, depending on what you explained and how you explained it, it may give them a better chance at survival. But at the end of the day, no matter what, it is up to that client to properly implement the things that he or she has been taught. And that is an aspect that the coach cannot train. A coach cannot train potential. A coach cannot teach you timing. A coach cannot teach you feeling. A coach can just share with you certain flowchart strings. They can show you risk versus reward on very specific attacks. A coach can give you scenarios that you can run. A coach can explain to you why a particular situation may happen and what you could do to counter. But the implementation of the information, it is up to you, the player that has been coached. So despite my feeling of this game, Casino 8 as I like to call it. I do love coaching. I do love breaking things down. I've always been that type of player. However, I'm not charging nobody $500, but it is something that I do believe anybody that's in my position, anybody that has my level of knowledge, which is 30 years of experience in this franchise, not to mention the other fighting games I've played, I do feel that stuff like this, you know, it is worth money. You know, because I've developed these tools, this experience over the course of many years. But it is up to that individual to dictate what their prices are. And as it pertains to this Coach Kazama individual, while many of us don't agree with his pricing, it's what he feels is worth his time and his experience. Much like somebody might charge $100. Somebody else might charge $300. Another person might charge $20. You know, it depends. You know, I'm more interested in seeing how is the information being shared, how many different variations are being broken down. Are you explaining it in a way to where a beginner can understand if you are targeting beginners? Are you explaining it in a way that will be useful for intermediate and or advanced level players? These are the things I'm more interested in because for me personally, I do my damnness to give as much value to the people that are channel members on my own channel when I'm breaking down certain characters, as I've just kind of done a rough example just now utilizing Feng. Of course, the way I usually approach things, I can get a bit wordy, but that's only because I'm trying to give as much as I can. Now, I keep stuff like this behind my channel memberships, which is like what, $2, $5, and $10 depending on the channel membership. Do I feel it's worth more than that? Yes, I do. Especially if I'm breaking down like Lei, which is my main character. But you know, I feel like I'm of the mind, if everybody does a little, no one has to do a lot. If I have a lot of people that's joining my channel memberships at $5, let's say, right? They're doing the $4.99 version or membership. And let's say if I get 100 people, that's 100 times 5. For me, that's exceptional. Because now I know I have this built-in, I guess, this community of sorts that respects what I do, that's supporting what I do, and it will spur me to continue onward. Now, could I charge more? Sure. Would some of those people understood? Maybe they would, because things do increase in price over the course of time. But I think as long as you're providing a certain level of value, I think those people who are supporting you will understand. So before I get out of here and conclude this video, I do want to share one particular thing that I do love with Steve Fox. So let me just go and change the characters around since I'm just showing Steve, because Steve Fox, he's definitely one of my characters. I would say beyond a shadow of a doubt, outside of Lei, Steve is a character I would basically bring into tournament, and I have. My last competitive event was back in 2018, 2017, and I took top 8. But that's neither here nor there. You can let me know in the comments section if you want me to upload some of my old, you know, past glory and past trauma in terms of matches. But let's just give Feng typical 1-2 punches. Now, this particular thing with Steve Fox is very similar to the 1-1 that I showed with Feng. There are a few differences though. Now, the move in question with Steve Fox which I feel a lot of Steves don't use, is actually Steve's 1 down 1 or 1-1, 1-1 down 1. This move, as far as I'm concerned, is one of his best maneuvers, and I don't think it's been highlighted enough. Now, can you counter this move? Yes. Can you sidestep this move? Similar to how I demonstrated with Feng Wei's standing 1-1, it's a little bit more tricky because let's just say if I have Feng Wei to sidestep left, he's gonna get hit. Okay, Feng Wei sidesteps right, he gets hit. If we do a sidewalk left, gets hit, right? Sidewalking. If we go sidewalk right, you're gonna get hit. Now, it's not 100% foolproof because a character that has a very good sidestep, like say Lily, for instance, Lily, as good as her sidestep is, she too can still get clipped by this. However, it is possible for her to sidestep it. Now, it is possible to attack reversal this in between. Let me just kind of show that. Let's just illustrate that real quick. I think if we can do this one, let's try this one. And let me also record just his, let's do shifting clouds, right? This is specific to Feng Wei. And then let's also add in his actual standard attack reversal. Let's just do that. Okay. So let's just go through each of them. Okay. So Feng Wei is going to do this. So yeah. So Feng Wei can counter this like that. There's your risk. Feng Wei can do that, right? The shifting clouds. He can do that. And of course, he can counter. Now, with all of that being said, your opponent has to make that read. Now, for you as the Steve player, let's say if we're going this particular option, your opponent has to already be committing and making that hard read that you are going to do this move. But because of the simplicity of it, which is 1 down 1, and the fact that your opponent has to react immediately, it poses a bit of a mind game to where if you just throw a jab, you're going to see a Feng Wei that's just going to just do this, and then you go and, do your, punish and then go about your business. Again, if you're looking at, say, an attack reversal, obviously you can't really do the same thing here to a degree, right? However, with Steve Fox, if you know your character, you know that Steve Fox, his up forward 1 cannot be countered, right? Neither can Steve's down forward 2 from Peekaboo, or his running 2 that can't be countered. So there's a lot of things that a little bit of character specific nuance that you have to be made aware of. However, while I just broke down what you can do to stop the 1 down 1 from Steve Fox, but it does not necessarily mean that the move is still not good. Now, one of the things that I really do like is that if you find your opponent is the mashy sort, whether they're doing standing 1-2 or whatever other move they're doing, adding the 1 down 1 is going to snuff them out of that. And as you can see, it does a pretty good chunk of damage at 18 damage, and you are +5. If you go into flicker by holding back, you are +11, which is absolutely insane. Depending on how you choose to implement this move after what I have shown you, that's up to you, the player. But for me, this is definitely one of Steve's best strings, best moves, however way you want to call it, because another way you can leverage this is this move, the down one itself comes out at 25 frames, right? So you cannot mash in between this. So since you're going to have an opponent that may try to time you, this is where you can do things like this. You can change it up. You can just do one, down one. And the same thing where if they're trying to mash and you're unsure of whether or not to commit to this or not, you can just still do one of Steve's other low crushing options. I mean, high crushing options, such as down 2-1. You can do, you want to risk, you can do down back 2. I wouldn't advise it, but it's possible. You can also, for me, you could do down 1, right? And then down 1, you're -2. But there are things that you can do. And the more situations and scenarios that you can give your client, just like I referenced with the Feng situation, the better your client will have the tools they need progressively get better, build their confidence, and develop as a player. I will do a video covering more about Steve Fox and Feng because they are two characters I know very well. I will say leveraging Steve's, his duck cancel is very important, but that's specific to him. But I do have a duck cancel video for my members. It actually got pretty decent review, but it is part of a channel membership. But yeah, I just wanted to just share my thoughts on what it is to be a coach, how I like to approach things. In fact, there is something else I do want to show. In addition to understanding your frames, it is also important to understanding trades. In fact, I can utilize Steve for this example. This is something I'll just give away real quick. If you'd manage to land, which is very possible, Steve's 1-1-2, right? So usually we know that this is like a punish. You can use it as a punish, you can use it as a poke. It's a natural 3-hit string, right? 25 damage, +4 on hit. Now what you will see is if I go in backsway, you will see that the frames go from +4 to +6. Now, to break this down, more often than not, your opponent is going to be mashing a 10-frame attack. So if you are looking at it, say like how I do, +6, and you're going against a 10-frame retaliation, that's 10 + 6, that's 16. What does Steve have here that is 16 frames? He has sway back 1. As you can see, this is 16 frames. So what that means is that this move trades. Now at that point, you may or may not have noticed that now you incurred a trade where you are at +20 advantage. Now what can you do at +20? You can do several things. You can do this. You can do several things. However, the best thing to do is utilize Steve's newly given up 2, which comes out at 17 frames. Also, coincidentally, this is also a move that you cannot attack reversal, by the way, just to put that out there as well. So putting it all together, it looks like this. Guaranteed. And then you follow up with whatever combo you want with Steve. Now also you can utilize this in a similar way by wall pushing your opponent. So to kind of illustrate how this looks, right? So you can wall push, 1-1-2, sway back this, up 2, wall splat. Like, so there's many different ways you can utilize this. I don't know how many Steve players are aware of this, because a lot of times you go like this, put them back on the wall, and then when they try to mash because they're trying to break this grab, this is where it can be something that's likely to happen. And then you just put them back on the wall and then follow through with whatever you want. That is a particular thing that I wanted to pass on to some of you guys. Some of you may already know it as a Steve user, some of you may not, but I do feel that it is pretty it's well worth to know if you are fighting against a Steve Fox player that is trying to utilize this on you. So I do feel it works both ways. And I think in the spirit of giving, another thing I want to share, you know, something, let's just load it up real quick. We'll load it up. I'm pretty sure you guys are still watching, hopefully. As I kind of show a few things. Some old legacy trickery here. So let's give Steve a 1-2, and I have shown this a few times on streams, but I'll just show it in this video. And I feel like this is even more of a real life situation that you can get. That's pretty simple. So you could do back 3 with Feng, which is, in my opinion, one of his best moves, period. And it's +4, similar to landing 1-1-2 with Steve. However, when you dash forward, like Steve, when you go into sway, it's actually, this is very similar. When you dash forward, you're +6. So much like Steve's sway back 1 of 16 frames, Feng Wei's crouch dash 1+2 is 16 frames. So pretty much it looks like this. There you have a trade. And in this situation, with Steve Fox, you are +25 on this trade. And also what makes this even better is that even if your opponent blocks this, it doesn't matter because it's mid and it's actually 0 on block. So the risk versus reward is largely in your favor in this situation with Feng Wei. So to put this all together, it looks like this. Or at least this is what I choose to do. Let me go out this way. And that's just out in open field. Of course, you could do your heat versions, your heat or whatever. Of course, other things you could do. You could do this. You could do that. There's a lot of other things you could do. Now, just to be clear, when you are trading with your opponent in Tekken, you know, Tekken 8 specifically, depending on the character that you have traded, depending on the character your opponent uses against you, some characters may be pushed out further, while some characters you will remain close. However, what I have come to learn and discover that in this particular situation, more often than not, you can land this with Feng Wei against most of the cast on this trade. So use it however way you see fit. I just wanted to give a tiny example on how I approach things when it comes to me training people or coaching, as it were. You can let me know in the comment section if this was understandable, if this is something that you find is valuable. But for me, just to close this out, I do take this very seriously. I do have my issues with the game as it is, but I've been always an individual who loves to coach, who loves to teach, who loves to pass on things. And while I understand higher level tournament players like a Knee, JDCR, Arslan Ash, while they may be elite level players or other players online that might have God of Destruction rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, 20, whatever the fuck it is, that does not always translate to them being a good coach. If we look at a real world example, if you take Michael Jordan, in my opinion, the greatest, the GOAT, basically. But, you know, I think when he tried, I think he tried ownership. He tried to own a team. He didn't do too well. So basically, just because you're great in one aspect does not mean that it's always going to transfer over to another. Sometimes it can. Sometimes it can. So I guess what I'm getting at is, don't always look and say, well, you're not a God of Destruction rank, so you have nothing to share. I can tell you that some people they may not be, maybe they don't have that level or that interest in competition. Maybe that person, you know, they just play a few times, but they just know a whole bunch of shit. And they're sitting on a treasure trove of knowledge that if they are willing to share with you, it may be in your best interest to pay attention. But anyway, this is Red. Let me know your thoughts. And with that being said, I'm going to prepare for the next video. Anyway, take care. Peace. Salute.